Okay, everything's shaking. Hello my friends, and welcome back to Player Display. I had somewhat of a rough day today, and I laid down on the couch before going to bed, and I felt like I wasn't very productive, so I figured, oh, there I have a few figures here that maybe if I do a video now, then I can edit them tomorrow, and then I'll have something to look forward to. So here we are with a brand new figure that came out of course, the Kenobi show, and originally from Star Wars Rebels, from way back when. This is the Grand Inquisitor, a title which has not aged well since his debut, since, hell, we could talk spoilers because everyone's seen everything at this point. This guy has died twice and has never actually amounted to anything yet, but he's, as a figure, he's good, he's alright. I wish I could put him just a little bit over the cusp so he could reach good and ascend from pretty good, but I can't do that for some reasons that we'll get into. So for the box, it's a usual windowed packaging, which again will be moved out when we get the green boxes. And soon, when I have more examples of that, we will have a deeper look. On the side, we got the usual profile there. Really nice artwork. Actually, unfortunately, the face on this box work is better looking than what we actually got on the figure, in my opinion. On the back, we got our usual multilingual bios, which the camera is not picking up on. I find it very interesting that every single Kenobi figure we've gotten so far has the exact same description. That, of course, is so they can not unveil spoilers accidentally before the merch comes out and all of that. So it's a little security blanket. They don't want to tell you too much, but if you've seen Rebels, you kind of already know what this guy's about, and he's not about that much. Over here, you got that profile once again, a little bit more zoomed in, and then crossed over with some of that Scotch tape. With this packaging, that will be one day be no more. Looking back at the figure here, so the overall silhouette, the profile, is pretty cool. I mean, you look at him and you're like, yeah, that's the Grand Inquisitor that we saw in the show. But there are some minor things that irk me enough that if it was just like one of these problems on its own, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but collectively it just notches down the experience when handling this figure. So let's start with the head, as we always do. I've got a love-hate relationship with this head, I'll have to be honest with you. First of all, the face is actually nice. It looks good. It's got some very good photoreal going on. It's interesting. It's kind of like a nice marriage between the live-action appearance we saw in Kenobi, of course, and then also you see a little bit of that stylized look we got in Rebels, which is kind of interesting. And of course, there's that whole debacle about how the head should be longer, taller rather, so he matches the species as it looked in Revenge of the Sith, but alas, we get a small head for some reason, don't know why. I like the face. It's the sculpt that throws me wrong. There is some, I use that word again, asymmetry, but in this case, I don't mean that as a compliment. You see that over here, the head kind of juts out. You've got sort of this gorge coming off from the side, and it kind of disturbs a greater appreciation we could otherwise have with this really nice printing here. Going around, I do like that they have those little ear muff pieces. We're not too sure what these things are used for. It's probably for the species. They have hypersensitive hearing, or maybe it magnifies their hearing because they can't hear too well. But again, I like those little details that we get, the very unique gear for particular aliens we see in the Star Wars galaxy. And on the back, you get kind of that trademark full design? I don't know what you'd call it, but yeah, that goes with this species, as I've said. I keep mentioning the species for some reason, but that's pretty much what informs this character. And I don't know, like, of course, you first saw that example on Utapau in Revenge of the Sith, and then of course we got to Rebels, and he had the long head, which we really wanted. Then we got to the show, and then the head was normal human size, which is not that great. And then we get the action figure where it's normal human size and then it's also abnormally shaped. So it's like every time we see the Grand Inquisitor, he looks more weird and unsatisfying. Moving on to the armor, it actually looks pretty good. It's that usual upper glove piece that kind of covers the articulation that's underneath, and it looks pretty cool. It's like one big single pad, not segmented or anything, which is accurate to the show. Unfortunately, there are some nice sculpting details in there that you could see are accented with some red, but if you can make it out, the red is printed a little bit off center. See, it pushes a little bit to the right of the figure, so that kind of bugs me a little bit, especially with that little patch or badge or whatever there. I don't even remember what it represents, but yeah, that was kind of an quote-unquote important part of his character and to Riva, so it would have been nice if better attention was paid to just getting that red lined up. But then again, it might just be my particular figure. Maybe on the others it's more consistent, but who knows. I really can't ignore these shoulder pads, which I actually really like. They're very medieval, very over the top, which is pretty much what the Inquisitors are all about. Going on to the back, I actually like the soft goods that's done here. I know everybody either is a soft goods person or a hard goods person. What's a term for a solid cape that we have now? But I like how it's executed. Before, when they did capes, it was kind of just a really big, wide, stiff piece of tough fabric that didn't really have this flow to it. But the way that they stitched this cape up is kind of interesting. It ties up to right there. There might be some adhesive, perhaps not. But it's a very accessible cape, and I kind of like how there's almost this pocket right here. If you don't like it, of course, it's not a big deal. It's on the back of the figure, but that also allows for some room for the lightsaber storing element. Yeah, I really like this cape, and one cool thing that I'll give points to this figure for is if you prefer the capeless look that we got when we first met the Inquisitor and Rebels, then you could probably remove it no problem. Maybe just undo a few stitches there, and then I suspect it would probably just slide right out. Like if you go to the top of between the neck and the shoulders, you see that the armor is segmented. So I guess it would just be a matter of getting the right tools, like some tweezers, maybe a little bit of hot water if you want to play it safe. Yeah, like I just got it in the back of my palm here. That looks pretty good without the cape, but I honestly don't mind either way. Sadly, the cape might be my favorite part of this figure, and that's not a good thing. I just noticed there's a butterfly in there. We haven't seen that on this channel yet, so that's really cool. Really like the underglove portion of this costume. It's kind of Kylo Ren looking. It's got like the rivets, kind of accordion looking, but that's really nice. It's got that slate gray. Then we've got some van braces, which we've been seeing a lot of in these reviews, haven't we? Interesting. It's like Disney likes armor for whatever reason. They're not too exciting. I mean, they're accurate to the show. There's no buttons on them. They're simply for protection. They're not like Mandalorian gauntlets where they shoot 10 different projectiles out of them or anything. As for the hands, I don't know what's up, down, left, right, or whatever, but we're just going to say that these are not the right hands for this figure. This is another downside, unfortunately. With any lightsaber wielding figure or blaster wielding figure, basically every single Star Wars figure we have that's a human or humanoid, we want the wrist to move up and then down in this respect, right? But no, in this case, we've got in and out. So that limits a lot of the possibilities, especially since he's a double-bladed saber wielder. So that's really a letdown, especially since, the Black Series line is well over a decade old now, and they should know what wrists to apply to what figure, and these are not the wrists that we want. The belt is pretty well done. Actually, the paint here is done just right in stark contrast to the badge and then the little whatever that we got there. They're lined up just right. They match up with the edges fine. The belt's pretty good. I guess the silver might be a little bit off in that hitch right there, but looks fine. Nothing to see on the back or on the belt, really. Just continued sculpt work. Down to the pants, I kind of like how they continue that very medieval looking armor motif on the shoulders, and then you get it on the thighs. I greatly facepalmed when I realized in previous reviews I was calling these the calves. So forgive me for that. I studied philosophy, not anatomy. But anyways, we get the usual swivel in there, and it's unhindered by the armor piece there, which is really good. It's pegged or glued right below the joint, so wherever you move the leg, it doesn't get in the way. It's nice and flexible, so they're definitely making some mechanical improvements when it comes to these more elaborate designs that Disney is creating. Boots are boots. What is there to talk about, really? These are quite boring, but pretty standard when it comes to a dark side character. That's it for the aesthetics of the figure. Let me go ahead and fix his cape. It's also worth mentioning that you kind of got to play around with the cape a little bit to get it to do what you want it to do. Kind of need to meander it just a little bit under the shoulders, and then again that segmented chest and back piece, but it takes only a few seconds. Anyways, moving on to accessories, he has one, which I guess technically flares off into three, but you've got the trademark Inquisitor, super spinny, propellery, double-bladed lightsaber, and it, I've got more problems here. When you look at the grip, obviously, elephant in the room, you've got the two little pegs there, and those are meant to attach it to his back, which is understandable, that's fine, but we've seen this type of design of grip before for a lightsaber, and those have been able to hang onto other Inquisitors just fine. What I mean by that is they can attach to the figure good, but at the same time, they can also be held by the figure very well. When it comes to him, it's a little bit restricting, because now you absolutely must have the hand right in there. So, again, I already talked about how it doesn't have the ideal wrist joints. On top of that, you can't really get the hand towards the top or the bottom or vice versa of the hilt. So that kind of is not a great decision on their part. I keep talking about silver. This is kind of just a gray, which is, I don't know, disappointing. That might be accurate to the show, but I feel like it would just stand out more and be more intimidating if it just had silver paint, or just be molded in silver, then be accented with the black paint. Although the blades are done well, they're the newer type where you unpeg them. You don't have to be too afraid of the peg just breaking off, where it happened to me twice on the second sister, which was the first Inquisitor figure we got. But yeah, you can see here, yeah, it's that thicker peg that's going to stay in there no problem. It's not going to break off. So you can have him doing a single blade if you like, which I also enjoy. I think that looks pretty cool. As we were kind of foreshadowing before, you could just have the hilt, then you can plug it into his back. You see the very pronounced and obvious holes right there. I actually haven't done this yet, so we'll be doing this together. We're gonna line up the holes, and yeah, it looks good. I mean, I was kind of right in calling out that pocket in the cape to kind of compensate for the very elaborate saber hilt that we got there, and it looks fine. It looks really cozy in there. Look at him from the front. You can't see it too well, but you can kind of see it perched over his shoulders a little bit. I like that. It's kind of gives him more of that regal feel. Getting the lightsaber in the hand, it's actually rather easy despite the pegs. You kind of just got to flex it out. I think it was stiff the first time I did it, but after that, it got pretty open. And then you kind of just plug in the hand in between the two pegs. And then, again, he holds it good. It's a good grip, but that's all the range you're getting, really. I mean, you can hinge it that way, and what's that going to do, though? I mean, you might as well just rotate the saber itself, which is fine, but again, it's just very limited. It's just these very minor tweaks, like relocate those pegs, or alternatively give us an alternate hilt that does not have the pegs, that is meant to be his hand-holdy lightsaber, I suppose, and then have an extra one with V-pegs, and then you can put it on the back. So then you've got options instead of having one size fits all and one of them not too great, and the one that matters most where he's actually holding the damn thing. So yeah, I'm not pleased with the saber. So let's get this out of the way, because it will inevitably get into the way as we look at the articulation, which is fine. It's up to standard with what we've been seeing thus far. You've got the dumbbell joint in the head, so you get a good amount of range between that and the single ball down there. I guess that's also probably a dumbbell. We can't really know unless we get some warm water and pop it off. But yeah, looking down, just fine. Looking up, pretty good. I mean, I don't know why you'd need so much up, but yeah, again, the head sculpt really bugs me. Even when I'm just articulating the head, like if he looks up, it throws off your gauge of sight as to whether he's looking in the direction you want him to or not. So that irritates me a little bit. As for the torso, you can see the armor piece is actually sliding over the belt as much as it can. It's getting out of the way, but it's just the nature of the inside sculpt to not let it go any further. Going back, he gets quite a bit back. All right, so that's something. He's got really good butterfly joints. Okay, so maybe I really love the cape and I really love the butterflies, but they are excellent. They do a really good job. The elbows, they got that really nice modern deep cut that I hope they do with every Black Series figure from here on out. And that comes up, wow, way past 90. Look at that. There's like a 30-degree angle right in there. We talked about the wrists already, but yeah, they go that far back, and they got a good amount in, but again, for a lightsaber, I don't know what that's going to do for you. And then, of course, obviously you've got swivel, which, yeah, is swivel. Not much else to talk about there. Down to the legs, kind of exactly what we've been seeing before. I mean, you really can't go wrong at this point. They can go all the way up. They can't go back too much. All right, so there's a little bit too much butt in the way. You get the thigh swivel, there we are, and that goes all the way around, and as I said, the armor does not restrict it at all. As for the knees, again, they're single jointed now. We do not get the double joints anymore. They come up to past 90. I'm actually kind of surprised at that. And then you get the feet here, that much back, and that much forward. That's really good. That's actually pretty, yeah, it's on par with Migs, maybe. Yeah, that's the Grand Inquisitor. I don't love it. I really wanted to. I was hoping that if we could, seriously, if it was a much better head sculpt, I think everything else about this figure I could forgive. Like, I talked about how the red was a little bit off. That could be corrected with some paint. The lightsaber bugs me a little bit, but again, I could paint the silver into there, but again, we shouldn't have to do that. That's part of the figure, and the pegs are a little irritating, but I mean, I could get used to that. But I just feel like if the head were better, maybe it were more accurate to the show, and it wasn't so distorted, I guess I'd enjoy it a little bit more. I don't know how far my love for this particular character can go, because he's a big talker who dies twice and not much more than that. Yeah, it's hard to believe he's the template for all the Inquisitors that would come later, because he has a cool backstory. He was a Jedi Temple guard, and he doesn't have much to show for it after that, so that's a real damn shame. But anyways, let's get to size comparisons, which I think will be the most fun part of this video, because our Inquisitor collection, as pathetic as they can be, it is ever growing. So let's look at the very first Inquisitor we ever got, which is the second sister from Fallen Order. And also, I should mention that the soft goods cloak, I made that myself out of a bedsheet, by the way, and clothing. You have Reva, who is, I guess, the second most interesting Inquisitor of canon. So there she is, and that's a very good figure in contrast to him. Like, for a minute here, we could talk about the peg integration. You see how this peg is, like, all the way off to the side. It's not in the way of where the hand would be going. That's a lot better. And you get the correct wrist movement, which is so much better. So basically, that's my way of saying that there's no excuse for this, which is pretty terrible, especially since they've made two Inquisitors before. Like, second sister, you could excuse her. She's the first Inquisitor we had with that type of lightsaber. There's no peg at all, and frankly, I don't think it would be too easy to squeeze on. And then we got Reva, who is also a very nice figure here, and then you could see the peg attaches to the hip, and that peg doesn't get in the way of the hand. So you'd suspect that by the time they got to the Grand Inquisitor, they'd have it figured out, but no, they got these two crazy-looking pegs getting in the way of the hands, which are already not very well articulated. Perhaps even more infuriating is the fifth brother, who has the exact same issue, but maybe even worse, because it's actually the inverse of the Grand Inquisitor, because it's a monster peg coming out of the center, and his hands have to be either at the top or at the bottom. It cannot be in the center. At least he's got the right wrists going on. So basically, in terms of a balance between articulation and how he grips the saber, the Grand Inquisitor is ironically the least grand of all the Inquisitors that we've gotten this far. And as for some more Kenobi figures, of course, we've got the newly released Darth Vader, who I think is completely reused, but he's a good figure. My main Vader before him was actually the Mafex or Mafex, I don't know the pronunciation, everyone says it differently, the Rogue One variant, and then I got this Vader, which is a little bit more New Hope looking. Makes sense chronologically, so that's all fine, well and good, and naturally he is taller than the Inquisitor, since he's taller than most characters in Star Wars. And then, of course, you need the titular Kenobi over here, and he sizes up just fine. Then just to get some other lines in there, we have, let's pop out a little bit because we're moving to the 7-inch scale. We have the Joker, Death in the Family from McFarlane, and then we also have NECA's Hellraiser Pinhead. Well, Pinhead from Hellraiser, who looks really nice. And yeah, he's 6-inch scale, so he's a little guy compared to them. And then we got NECA's new sparkly RoboCop, which I really like. Maybe I'll review him on his own one day because he's an excellent figure and he looks fantastic. Stay out of trouble. And then you know what we must do. We got to get the little guys out. So of course we have the child over here, who I forgot to mention I actually custom painted and kind of regret that because it's less accurate to the show now. Then we got Ruby from Bad Batch. And then we got Muck Muck, because Muck Muck. And why else? What other reason do you need? It's Muck Muck, damn it. And that's it for the Grand Inquisitor. Yeah, he's kind of a peg warmer, guys. I don't know what else to tell you. Overall, if you just want a figure that is on the dark side, has a good silhouette, at least has a red blade, even if the hilt isn't that spectacular, then yeah, there you go. He's a cool dark side stand-in, I suppose. So thanks again for watching. I hope you like this content that's coming out. I hate the fact that I'm saying this because everyone says it. But if you like the content, subscribe, like, go in the comments, just say hi. It would be nice. It would be cool. Thanks again, and I will see you all later. I'll be honest with you, I did not mind his look in the show, except for the fact that someone in some stray YouTube comments thread had to point out the fact that he looks like the guy from Smashing Pumpkins. So that gives me an added layer of enjoyment when it comes to this character. So every time I look at him, I can't unhear "The end is the beginning is the end" from Batman and Robin, which is my favorite Batman movie. Don't yell at me. Anyways, let's keep going. We're not He actually reminds me of X1 from one of those Battlefront games from back when. Yeah, Elite Squadron, right? Anyone remember that character? Where'd he go? He is never talked about at all. I miss X1. He was fun. I miss my DS, man. Those were the days. Anyways, wait, is there a peg? I don't actually remember. No, there's no peg. Okay, I'm in the right. I'm fine. And then you can plug it into his bat. So his bat. Yeah, he has a bat. He's friends with Harley Quinn. It's a good cape. I really like the cape. Have I mentioned I like the cape? I think I forgot to mention I like the cape. Yeah, they're boots. Boots are boots, and that's the end of the story. But he looks kind of cool. Every time I try complimenting this figure, I have a little bit of trouble. I also find the Inquisitors really interesting because as cool as they look, have they really accomplished anything? I think the most successful Inquisitor was Second Sister, and the only thing that was interesting about her is that she killed one of a Jedi's friends, and then she chased him around the galaxy for a little bit, and then she changed her mind, and then she died. So that's the most complex Inquisitor we have. So what's the point of these guys again? Oh, sad.